guys know that the US and the Philippines held the joint military exercise in April 2023, and China felt offended with this exercise because it has the biggest scale and some different projects that they think this exercise is targeted China. And why is these three countries have this kind of complex relations? So we are going to talk about this topic, and we want to ask a question about should the Philippines and US continue to strengthen military ties despite China's protests? And to talk about this topic, we are going to divide this video into 5 parts, and let's just start diving into the first parts. The first part is historical context. To talk about this topic, we think we need to have some basic concepts of Philippines and US relations. We divide this history into 4 eras. First era of the Philippines was colonized period. In this era, Philippines has not been independent yet and always be colonized by other countries. The first was the Spanish, then the US, and it was colonized by the Japan during the World War II. But after the 1946, they finally be independent and has their own government. However, when they are independent, they have the president named Marcos. And Marcos was a dictator that declared martial law, and actually have a lot of scandals with his president's term. That's why he was finally be overthrown by the People Power Revolution, and we got the final era. They got the 5th Republic government, and have already had 7 different presidents since 1986. So let's take the recent 3 presidents as examples. The Aquino III is most closer to the US, and the Duterte is more closer to China, and the Marcos Jr. is trying to find the balance between these 2 global powers. Let's see if he could make this work. Now we got some basic concepts of Philippines and the US relations. Let's talk about China's protests and territorial claims. Why is China and the Philippines relations is so different than before? Because China has raised a lot compared to the past. From 1952 to 2018, China has the economic growth that's GDP's average growth of 8.1%. That makes China a very strong global power now. Also, they have strong ambition of expanding their territory. So they have built 7 artificial islands based in South China Sea. Since 2014, we can see that they have made a lot of efforts to expand their territories. Also, they have competition with Philippines of Spratly Island and Scarborough Shoal. And we are going to talk about the details in the next slide. First is Spratly Island. In April 2019, the Chinese ship entered Philippines controlled water in the South China Sea. In this incident, we can see that China disrespects Philippines' territorial claim and the rejection of international decisions on managing the South China Sea disputes. For Scarborough Shoal is even worse. In 2012, China attempted to occupy this shoal, which was Philippines' possession. Although it was interrupted by the storm, but China still built the blockade and take it from the Philippines. It's now in China's possession. Why China spent that much effort to expand its territory in the South China Sea rather than other places? South China Sea is the place which full of resources. China can not only make profit but also strengthen their dominance in this area. That's why China dedicated in expanding their territory in this area, even though that means offend its neighbors in this area. Now we are going to talk about the benefits of strengthening military ties. For the US, it can prevent China from controlling the first island chain, which means the communist power wouldn't expand. For the Philippines, they can strengthen their military power, which can be divided into three parts. First is agreements. These two countries signed three military agreements, which let the US Army can enter the Philippines and use their military bases. Second is base. The Philippines opened 4 more bases to the US in February 2023. That more troops can help protect their country. Last is military exercise. The US helps training their troops that they can learn from the best. All of the above can help them not that helpless when facing China's invasion.
Now part 4 is the potential challenges and risk. Strengthening military ties between the Philippines and other countries, especially if it is perceived as a direct response to China's protests, can escalate tensions between the two nations. China may view such actions as proactive and may respond with increased military presence or aggressive rhetoric, leading to a potential spiral of tensions. Also, China is a major trading partner and investor in the Philippines. Strengthening military ties with other countries could potentially strain economic relations with China. China may retaliate economically by imposing trade restrictions, tariffs, or reducing investments, which could adversely impact the Philippines' economy. The Philippines is situated in a geopolitically sensitive region. Any increase in military activities or alliances can impact regional stability and security dynamics. Neighboring countries, particularly those with existing territorial disputes with China, may view the strengthened military ties with concern, potentially leading to a regional arms race or further escalating tensions. Moreover, strengthening military ties against China's protests may strain diplomatic relations between the Philippines and China. It could lead to deterioration in bilateral cooperation or various issues, such as trade, infrastructure projects, or people-to-people exchanges. This could limit the Philippines' ability to address shared challenges and pursue mutually beneficial goals. The Philippines can maintain open channels of communication with China to address concerns and explain the rationale behind strengthening military ties. By engaging in constructive dialogue, both countries may be able to find common ground and prevent misunderstandings that could escalate tensions. Instead of strengthening military ties with a single country, the Philippines could consider engaging in multilateral frameworks or regional security arrangements. This approach would help balance the power dynamics and reduce perception of being allied against China specifically. Regional forums like the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, also known as ASEAN, can provide avenues for dialogue and conflict resolution. The Philippines can focus on enhancing non-military aspects of its relationships with other countries. This could involve strengthening economic ties, promoting cultural exchanges, and expanding cooperation in areas such as education, tourism, and technology. By emphasizing the mutual benefits of cooperation, the Philippines can demonstrate its commitment to peaceful and constructive engagement. Besides, the Philippines can assert its commitment to an independent foreign policy that prioritizes national interests and regional stability. By clearly articulating its intention and strategic objectives, the Philippines can reduce the perception of being swayed solely by external influences. This can help maintain the country's credibility and autonomy in its decision-making process. It is important for the Philippines to carefully assess the potential economic and diplomatic consequences of strengthening military ties and make informed decisions that balance national security, economic interests, and regional stability. Part 5. The conclusion. U.S. and the Philippines have a cooperative history that has developed into a strong partnership over the past century. Maintaining a close military relationship will ideally increase Philippine security and territorial integrity, both of which China has attempted to weaken in the past 2 decades through conflict in the South China Sea. On the other hand, the Philippines risks agitating China and getting dragged into a clash between them and the U.S. Another major fear of Philippine citizens is that a heavy reliance on the U.S. for military support will open the Philippines up to be controlled and manipulated for U.S. interests. And of course, as China repeatedly claims in its protests to the continued military cooperation, they risk disrupting peace and stability in the Asia-Pacific. So, should the Philippines and the U.S. continue to strengthen military ties despite China's protests? All things considered, we ultimately believe that it is well within the Philippines' national interest to work closely with the U.S. military. Perhaps we're a bit biased, and the Philippines base allow for a quick reaction time in case China invades Taiwan. But even for the Philippines, having U.S. military support can increase the opportunity to regain some of the territory that they lost to China in the South China Sea. As long as there are regulations to prevent a U.S. military occupation in the Philippines, Manila should continue to collaborate. Before we go, we want to leave you with this question to think about. During and soon after a pandemic, states adopt isolationist policies to attempt to keep their citizens healthy and functioning. In this post-pandemic era, do you think it's possible for states to break out the Cold War mentality that they've been leaning toward? Can the Philippines be one of those states? Or are we doomed to escalate and eventually enact World War III? This is our presentation. Thank you, everyone.